Holding a phone in your hand to shoot a YouTube video isn't on the list of most comfortable things you can do, and trusting the so-called life hacks to attach the phone to a tripod safely may not be a good idea in general. This is why even before creating my channel, I built this tripod mount for my phone, which I can either attach to my homemade tripod, obviously, or just use like this by simply screwing on a handle. In today's video, I am going to show you step by step how you can make one of these for yourself or your friends, and to reduce our carbon footprint, we are going to use 100% recycled material, aka garbage. So let's jump right into it. So the first step is to cut the backplate out of the scrap piece of 8mm plywood. It measures 6 cm wide by 8.5 cm long, but as the length really depends on the width of your phone, I think as a rule of thumb you could say it should be at least a centimeter longer than your phone is wide. To get appropriate chunks of hardwood, I need to rummage through my recycle bin, and I think the sidebar of a baby toy, a toy block, and a piece of a maple cutting board should do the job fine. Now, cutting all these parts is not very interesting. They are all 6 cm long, and none of them is trimmed to its final width before routing the grooves for the phone to sit in. In any case, all the measurements are in the video description. Since I don't have a router table, I am screwing this makeshift fence thingy onto the handheld router to use it upside down. If your table saw can tilt, you can use it instead. For the lower jaw, I am routing the groove as close to the edge as possible, because the other side will be trimmed down later on. To do the upper one, just move the fence like half a millimeter away from the router bit. So now the upper jaw is done, we can cut the lower one to its final thickness, leaving just about the same amount of ridge on this side as we did here. It didn't quite get rid of this burn mark, but that's okay. Now we can put it onto the back plate and measure the total thickness, which is going to give us the thickness of the upper jaw and the width of this part. Whoops, what you just witnessed there was the table saw blade getting loose. Now drill a 6mm hole into the part I don't have a name for, and a countersink for the screw head to go into. Glue the bolts in, I'm using normal wood glue, which works just fine, and set it aside to dry for a day. Before we attach anything to the back plate, we need to drill a bunch of holes into the upper jaw, and even before that, we need to find a suitable metal rod for the sliding mechanism. Looking through my collection, there doesn't seem to be much else we can use than these white ones. Those came from an old clothes drying rack, which means they're covered in white plastic, and I'll have to figure out a way how to get rid of that. I think I'm going to use this one. It is 3.5 millimeters in diameter, which is just fine. Now we can cut off 2 9cm long pieces, and if you're using better round bar than I do, you may skip this step, but I need to sand and polish these rods first. Standard household scouring agents do work kind of well for polishing. These holes are the most critical part of the entire project. If they are not straight enough, it won't work and you'll have to make a new upper jaw. Now, ideally, these would be as parallel as possible, and checking with the calipers, they actually seem to be quite good. They're only about tenth of a millimeter closer at the ends than down here, but laying it down like this, you can really see how far they're off plane-wise by slightly prodding at the ends and seeing how much it tips around. Now, this should still work. Worst case, you'll have to kind of bend them straight once they're glued in. Clamp the upper jaw and the back plate to a random piece of whatever you've got lying around, cause we'll use it like a doweling jig in a moment. Carefully starting off the holes with the drill. And then going as deep as possible with the drill press. And then going even deeper with the drill again. Now it's finally time to stick on some rubber. I'm using bicycle inner tube for this, obviously a punctured one. You just need to wash off the white powder on the inside before gluing it on. Stick it on with liberal amounts of super glue and don't do it like me and forget to glue your fingers to it as well. If you do get super glue onto your fingers, your best bet is to sand it off. Believe me, it works. Yes, now that the super glue is dry, let's cut off the overhang with a sharp knife. And actually a pair of dull scissors as well. You can also use a belt sander to clean it up afterwards. And it is finally time to glue the lower jaw to the back plate. Make sure that the ridge I was talking about earlier is facing away from the back plate, as its only purpose is to prevent the jaws from getting damaged. I like trimming it down a bit before gluing the part without a name onto it, just to get a really flat square surface. While waiting for this to dry, we can also go ahead and glue in these metal rods. Using less glue would also be a good idea. I'm clamping them to a flat piece of particle board so they'll hopefully be straight once the glue sets. Having let it dry thoroughly, I can now sand off all the glue squeeze out and round off the corners. The moment of truth has come. Will it fit? Yes, it does. Now, to adapt it to the phone we want to use it with, just put the jaws around the phone offset like this, and there needs to be a gap of about 5 millimeters between the upper jaw and the back plate, so I'm going to mark the new length like this. Obviously, the final size of the gap heavily depends on the springs you're using. In my case, I know it's going to be 5 millimeters, but Obviously, you much rather want to have too small of a gap and cut it down a second time than trying to glue something back on. If the upper jaw doesn't slide in and out easily enough, you might have to ream out the holes a little more. The spring I'm using came from a liquid soap dispenser pump, and I'm going to cut it into 3 pieces to get the right length. The last step is to cut off a piece of threaded rod and glue it in, and yes, I said 100% recycled material. That threaded rod is new, but I could just as well use some random salvage bolt and cut its head off. I need a used wing nut. Well, that is it. Stick your phone in it, tighten the wing nut, and you can screw it onto a tripod or pretty much anything with a 6mm hole in it. To get freehand footage, just screw on something like this ugly brown handle I made several weeks ago. And there you are. You'd never think this was made out of garbage, would you? Cool, now I have 2 of these. So thank you very much for watching, especially for sticking around till the end. I really hope you found this video useful. If you want me to publish free plans for this smartphone holder, tell me down in the comments. Subscribe to Chronic Mechatronic to see how to build useful stuff for cheap. And on that note, have a nice new year. I'll see you in January. Bye! By the way, my website has finally gone live, link in the description.